Most of what I knew about Iceland prior to this trip, I learned from Mighty Ducks Part 2 or Part 3 when I was a kid. And they said, Iceland's nice, Greenland's ice.
So Iceland came about because a bunch of us were just desperate to travel.
Because it was really not something in my sights. Like Kevin and I were saving for a house, and it didn't seem like the logical thing to do.
I thought it was a hell of a place. For one, it's quite accessible. 5 hours is not that terrible of a flight by any stretch of the imagination. And once you get there in the winter, it is just pristine, beautiful, rugged.
And then I kind of just thought to myself, when do you have the opportunity in life to go with 8 of your closest friends, and maybe people you aren't so close with but feel like you could become close with, and you aren't going to have an opportunity to really experience them and who they are in such an intimate way. You're going to a fucking really cool place in a time of the year where everybody else says, why would you do that? Then everybody started showing up, and it was like, all right, I'm excited. Like, I can finally let my excitement come out. And, like, of course, missing Kevin, but just feeling so enthusiastic and like some young love or like young enthusiasm about it. It just felt like a trip I never had gone on before. And it was very exciting. Like, I felt almost like giddy about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Iceland, the home of Icelandair. The local time is 25 minutes past 3. We do hope that you have enjoyed the flight with us. Thank you for choosing Icelandair and have a pleasant day.
We come down the planes back and forth all over the place, and then all of a sudden we sat down. What do you know? And there it is. Like, we sat down safe and sound. Pilots did a great job.
I had not expected it to be that windy. Windy to a point that the aircraft was actually shaking quite vigorously.
Well, actually, as soon as we got off the airplane, it was like, oh shit, Mama's not in Kansas anymore. It is breezy, right? It was so windy.
I would call it like hurricane force winds. And that just totally took me by surprise. I'm a heavy guy, I'm 300 pounds, and it took a lot of energy to kind of stay on there.
But they can't. The baggage handlers. Must be this Union baggage handler thing in Iceland. These Vikings, like, they can take longboats across the sea, but they can't somehow unload baggage in the wintertime when the wind's blowing hard. I don't know. So we had to wait at the airport for like 3 ungodly hours.
But I'm not completely unhappy about that situation. Yeah, I was a little anxious, because we had a booking that we had to get to, but we got to buy a lot of booze. I mean, we were right at the duty-free shop. We just bought a lot of alcohol and just sat on the carousel and waited for our shit to come through.
Even though we were, like, tired and waiting to get our shit, it was still like, oh, let's go. We're going to the Blue Lagoon after. That was really cool. So, still felt all right about it.
we get to Blue Lagoon, and it's dark like 20 hours a day there. So in the wintertime, we get to Blue Lagoon, and really surreal because we're a bit jet lagged and everything, of course. And we're walking down, still in the dark, going to this Blue Lagoon, and we get checked in. We get in the hot, nice water. It is like a lagoon. It's blue, sort of. The sky, when you can see it, is very foreboding. Ice particles raining down constantly, trying to hit you in the face.
I was excited to get in the water. I was like, man, I hope it's warm enough because it's pretty cold out here and windy. And then getting in the water was like, it's actually kind of perfect. The water temperature was. And we also had the great idea to wear hats in the pool. So
I stepped in the water, it felt okay. I was like, all right, this is gonna be okay. And then you go through that little airlock door into like the open, and then the cold hits you like a sledgehammer. And then everything shrivels, like everything. Just, that was intense. And then it shrivels, and then you have nowhere to hide. So I ran for this grotto, couldn't find any of my friends, it's just me running into this little grotto, and there's 6 other people in there with their little shriveled parts just hiding from the cold. And you step out, this half of your body's underwater, and it's warm and it's very comfortable, and then this half is above the water, and it is fucking cold, and you're getting pelted with the smallest hail I've ever seen. It was like getting shot with a BB gun while swimming. I thought it was unpleasant at first, and then you get used to it, and it's almost surreal because there's like a storm happening above your head, and you see it, you're in the middle of this blizzard, but the rest of you is just warm and safe, and you're loving it. So it's surreal.
I mean, I'd heard a bit about some lagoons that were not blue, but other colors that were more out in the country, that may be a little more natural. Blue Lagoon, I mean, let's be real, it's pretty commercial, pretty touristy, but we were there on the absolute optimal condition, right? I mean, very few people, hailing, ice raining down from the sky, nice wind, fog. It actually exceeded my expectations.
You know, I will say that was the first, and it was day one, like, I really connected with TT. I feel like we had a great time, and that was awesome. Her and I, like, really wanted to get some, like, essential pictures from our trip. So, from the Blue Lagoon, you know, like the pictures you see in Travelers magazine or whatever. And we really want to do that. Everybody else was just kind of hanging out, going to get their mask, doing their thing. You know, we just, like, dealt with the brisk cold, getting out to pose for this, like, model-esque picture. But meanwhile, we're actually really freezing and shaking and terribly cold. And then, I don't know, we just kind of, like, bonded. So it was kind of the first time I'd really, like, connected and had an awesome time with TT, just the two of us. And so that was really, really cool. And it kind of set the stage for the rest of the trip, which was just, like, harmonious union of the misfits that are our friend group.
After that, we took a ride through a Martian landscape, or lunar landscape, some would call it, to Reykjavik, to our Airbnb. got all checked in there. Perfectly decent place for, what was it, 8 people? 8 people. 8 perfect strangers trusting one another enough to live together and cohabitate in Reykjavik, a non-English speaking Viking stronghold. Hell of a thing to do. Day 2, we went on what they call the Golden Circle, which is probably one of the most popular loops that you can drive or take a tour bus on out of Reykjavik. It's fairly close to Reykjavik, but you get to see some amazing things. So we started again way before sunrise because it's dark a lot there. Get in the car. Let's see. The first stop was this place called Carrad Crater. And some of us thought an asteroid hit there, the one that wiped out the dinosaurs. But no, it turns out it's more of a volcanic crater where the heat and the magma like came up into a volcano and then collapsed. And now we have a nice lake in this crater on this windswept tundra in Iceland. And that was our first real introduction to the actual, the rural landscape, the natural beauty of Iceland. And it was incredible. Well, up until that point, we thought that was pretty windy. We learned later what wind really was. But yeah, Carrad Crater, nice place. So from Carrad Crater, we went on up to Gullfoss Waterfall, which is probably one of the most famous waterfalls in Iceland. Wide, nice drops in this gorge, like almost a valley. Beautiful, beautiful location. Lots of hiking trails which you can take, I think, in the summertime or the warmer season anyways, but they were all closed because we were in the middle of like hurricane gale force winds.
I feared my life, actually, feared for my life. I feel like I'm a pretty extreme person. Like, I do put myself out there. I like to feel that adrenaline rush. And I personally was scared.
Like, getting up to the waterfalls was quite an ordeal because it was windy and we're getting pelted by these tiny little rocks and ice. I thought about not going up to it a couple of times. I was like, why am I putting myself through this?
I know Quiggs and Andrew and some other crazy fucks were down by the waterfall. How they made it down there, I don't know.
But then at the second thought, I was like, you know what? Let me just do this. And if I come out of it unscathed, wow, this is just one more cool thing that I've done. So I did end up walking up to the edge, and it just totally paid off because that sight was gorgeous. Just standing there looking at that waterfall, oh my God, took my breath away.
That was the most extreme weather I've ever been involved in my life. The wind and the cold and the hail.
Some members in our group lost some scarves and hats and things like that. Again, hurricane. It's like, who knows where that stuff is now. It's probably like, I don't know, Africa or something. It probably took wherever the current goes, the Northern Atlantic current. The one I saw in Finding Nemo, it's just like, back, who knows where that went. But we did lose some things. But you could tell it was a truly beautiful place. We followed the wind downstream and ended up at a place called Geyser, which, similar to Yellowstone National Park or places of the sort, there are like hot spring geysers, all volcanic driven, where every so often this geyser spews hot water out of the ground, and unsuspecting people can be scalded, which we were not. We were prepared. We got some photos and some videos, and that was a pretty cool place. That was, towards the evening hours, and after that I remember a fairly long drive home, windy, a bit snowy, icy, studded tires. Americans can learn something from that. Anybody that lives in the northern states, studded tires are the way to go. Even so, there are frequent road closings. You never know if you can get back home or not.
I recall there's one moment when we got off a freeway and merged onto a dual carriageway. And the markings were kind of unique, because the marking that separates oncoming traffic from you should have been a double yellow line, but it was not. It was a single dashed white line. And like I do right here, I switched over to the fast lane, which turned out to be oncoming traffic, and that was terrifying. And then immediately after that, we go into whiteout conditions, which is also terrifying.
The most ridiculous whiteout conditions I have ever experienced in my life. And that was with the roads open. I can only imagine what it takes to close the roads there. I mean, it happened daily, but the roads we drove on, I could not see anything. I stopped steering at one point because there was no point. I mean, you couldn't see where you're going anyways. So I just took my hands off the wheel and said, we'll either get there or we won't. And we got there.
The weather was definitely something that it just put things in perspective. Like, we're so small and insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Like, Mother Nature will totally whoop our ass. And I definitely got a taste of that while in Iceland. It was beautiful. It was scary. And if I were to say the place had a color palette, it was black and white. Like, that's it. It's just white snow, black rocks, white sky. It was surreal and stunning at the same time.
What was day 3? Day 3 was horseback riding. They have these things, these little furry creatures they call Icelandic ponies, except you're not supposed to call them that. You call them Icelandic horses. They're real horses.
The horses were so cute. They had extra fur and hair, which is always brings up the cuteness factor.
I was fearful for one of the members in our party at one point, as I know was Alex.
I decided to go on the trotting course. I was just trying to live it. I was just trying to experience and put myself in the whole experience and...
Quite fearful when we heard what I thought was a helmet hit the ground, but it could have been something else, a horse hoof, it could have been anything, I don't know.
I fell off the horse. It sucked. It was really fucking scary. I'm laughing about it now because I didn't get any brain damage that I know of from it, but it was really scary.
That person survived. I wore out one horse and had to get a second one. and ended up, we trotted a few times. It was like icy lunar landscape.
It was just unlike any other ride that I've gotten to do, because it was it's a different animal, different than the horses we have here. So yeah, that was absolutely incredible. I was really excited that other people were wanting to do it as well.
I've done some trips with family before. I'm trying to think if we never with like 8 grown-ass adults before. I've never lived with 8 adults overseas on vacation before. So I will admit, I didn't know what to expect with that. I thought there might be some bickering. I thought there might be some wrestling. Who knows what? I mean, there are axes everywhere in Iceland, longbows and things. I mean,
we were good friends before this trip, but this kind of like made us friends for life, kind of.
Surprisingly, everyone got along. We, split up the chores. We split up the drive. Well, a couple of us did all the driving, but we were fine doing the driving. We split up the chores with dishes and food and cooking and all that, and got along great. This was a wonderful bunch. No complaints about anybody, except one that I'll mention later. But otherwise, no, it was great.
I would be roomies with all of them.
There were some things I was not expecting, and people were dancing on tables. I'd never seen that before, ever, anywhere. And then turns out, Reykjavik, Iceland was my first time. I did not dance on the table. I was afraid to, but some other people in our party did. But all in all, it was a hell of a rave.
I think Andrew's the one who found it, because he had sent me a link to it. Was it you?
Yes.
So B found it.
The Penis Museum.
So I was like, of course we have to go. And we went, and it was like...
elephant dicks, lots of whale dicks, all sorts of... The sea creatures really have the largest dicks, and then the elephant was pretty big. The little cat dick was very small, as you might imagine, with some little tufts of hair attached.
It was like, yeah, of course it's funny, haha, hee hee, but also just very interesting.
There may be a more scientific name for that museum over there, but it's a foreign language. I don't know. It's like phallology or something, but... out of Reykjavik, there are two very famous drives. One is the Golden Circle, which I discussed, and then the second one is called the Southern Coast, where you go, you take the highway basically along the ocean for much of it. There are black sand beaches. There are a couple of beautiful waterfalls, one of which you can get behind and actually look out from behind the waterfall. But it was wintertime and it was all icy, so that didn't work out. But first we saw sunrise at this place. It started with a D, like some crazy Viking name. There was a plane that crashed in the 70s, I think it was, early 70s, and they were looking for a landing strip. They couldn't find one. They said, you know what, we'll just land on this black sand beach. And they crash landed. All the pilots survived, and now it's this beautiful crash site.
It just looked like barren Antarctic landscape, and then you see this little cigar-shaped object in the middle of it all, and it's the crashed DC-3.
Never really been to a place like that before either. Barren, wind-swept landscape.
mysteriously years ago. No sign of the pilot! Aha!
And after that, we were worried about roads closing, some people more than others. So some people took off. My car, we decided to stop at 2 waterfalls on the way back and actually hiked around the waterfalls. There's like 500 or 600 stairs on one of them. We hiked all the way to the top. It was really beautiful. It makes me want to come back in the summertime and actually like do like a 3, 4, 5 day backpacking trip in the, I'll call it the highlands, but really just like, you know, the land above the sea, and hike on the glaciers. So I'll come back one day.
You guys had gone snorkeling?
We did. Was that the? That was not the. That was the last full day. We went snorkeling. There's this place called Silfra. It's roughly where the tectonic plates come together. The European and like North American plates come together, and there's this chasm in this lake. It's not the ocean. It's an inland lake where there's melted glacier water that goes underground, gets all the particulates get like filtered out by the ground, and it comes back up into a lake called Silfra, and it's the clearest water in the world. They say it was pretty fucking clear, like really clear, and you can snorkel in it.
It was the clarity of it was something I've never experienced, and it's really cool to say when you tell people that you've done that. It's kind of awe-inspiring, like wow. You know, on one side's one continent, on the other side is another. And we met a really cool Polak, so that was cool.
It just gave me feeling and ability to do anything. I was just, from snorkeling to seeing tectonic plates and putting your head in that 32-degree water and just underneath that surface, it was a whole nother world. And it was just an incredible feeling that you can't describe. It's just hard to put into words.
It was the coldest I've ever been in my life, but in a good way, because it was so beautiful. And I had a GoPro. I took great photos, videos. You could dive down into the water. You could drink the water. You could just, you got your little snorkel thing. You just drink water anytime you get a little thirsty. Just have a little bit. And anytime you want, because it's totally clean. And it's like 37 degrees. And we were in there for a good half hour or more. And it was pretty wild.
When I think of Iceland, I think of a dream.
I've done other adventure type trips where I've gone hiking and backpacking and whatnot, but this just really was like day after day of weather and, animals and surroundings that just gave me a very humbled feeling for Mother Nature and just my place in the world. That was really like how I experienced it.
It didn't even feel real. Everything exceeded my expectations. Every time I looked at something, I was like, is this even real? Like, I feel like I'm in a dream, someone pinched me. There was just this expanse of land just full of snow and volcanic material, and I just couldn't wrap my head around that this was actually a landscape that I was actually enjoying, experiencing, and adventuring with a group of friends that I've had the pleasure to be friends with. So the whole thing was pretty incredible.
And it was great to know that as adults, you can, as an adult, go on a trip with people, some of which you've never met before, some of which you've hardly hung out with, and some of which you've only known for less than 3 years, and have a hell of a time. And that's encouraging. That should be encouraging to all of humanity, that you can do something like that and have such a marvelous time and get along so well.
I feel like I left the trip with a good sense of community. I liked how much we worked together just to make food and clean up and get to know each other even more, and that you guys welcome in one of my friends that I brought on the trip that didn't start out knowing anyone else on the trip. So I feel like it was a good sense of community building and possibility of just putting yourself out there and trying something different and really enjoying something. And now I'm itching to go somewhere else. It was awesome.
When Titi invited me to visit Iceland. I was really excited because it would be a good chance to spend quality time with a good friend, and also it's always been a big dream of mine to see the Northern Lights. So I jumped at the chance, and I got even more excited when I got to meet the rest of the group. Everyone kind of worked together to cook and clean up and to navigate and decide on where we're going. And I really appreciated all the work that everyone put into planning, and I would love to go back and keep chasing those Northern Lights at some point.
Iceland, for me, was a lot of firsts. It was my first big friend trip internationally. It was the first stamp on my passport. It was my first time leaving the U.S., my first time in Europe, my first time on a horse. It really puts into perspective what matters in life. And when you're taking a trip like that, the things that matter in life are people and experiences. Those are the things that matter in life, and that makes a life worth living. And that's what I got out of Iceland. It was just an incredible journey that makes you want to explore more and do more things and have more experiences, because that's the way to happiness and fulfillment.
I actually enjoyed the warmth of the water, but
And we felt pretty honorable.